Olson the Red. Written and read by Robert Kipling. Illustrated by Dream Studio. The man who most influenced my attitude about writing in my younger years could best be described as a Viking. As I recall, he stood about 7 feet tall, had hands the size of tennis rackets, and sported a bushy red mustache that was undoubtedly tinged with the blood of those who failed to pass his classes. Mr. J. Olson, or Olson the Red, as he was known amongst my peers, was a history instructor during my junior year of high school. He was indeed a very fierce and intimidating man. He also served as a football coach, and I have every reason to believe that on the weekends he would organize the team into war parties and lead them on raids against rival schools. Mr. Olson challenged my writing abilities in 2 ways. First, he assigned a volume and caliber of work previously unimagined by his thus far pampered charges. I was compelled on pain of academic defeat, and possibly decapitation, to produce more high-quality written material in Mr. Olson's U.S. history class than in any other course I took in high school. One of the most dreaded types of writing assignments Mr. Olson would prescribe was the infamous DBQ, or Document-Based Question. Completing a DBQ involved much research and the incorporation of relevant historical documents in a coherent essay response. Olson the Red was also notorious for including essay questions on his tests, requiring students to produce protracted and well-reasoned responses without the luxury of time, research, or a word processor. The second way Olson the Red refined my writing ability dealt more with boldness than perseverance or the ability to think on my feet. The onerous barbarian would not put up with writing that did not take a firm stand one way or the other. He challenged me to put more thought into my work, and he forced me to defend it. I was rather disappointed to find that the tyrant would not accept an essay that argued that Herbert Hoover and Franklin D. Roosevelt were really very much the same and that conservatives and liberals did not actually exhibit any concrete differences. After submitting an assignment that implied as much, it took several very opinionated essays for me to redeem myself and lose the nickname of Fence Rider. I must pause to consider why a high school teacher would be compelled to force so much writing on a history class. Perhaps Mr. Olson was a sort of power-hungry sadist who took pleasure from seeing his students cringe every time he assigned a new project. Or maybe the spoils of his raids weren't keeping the bills paid. If he had enough essays to read, he wouldn't need to pay for a subscription to Medium. But in truth, I think the most likely reason is simply duty. Mr. Olson was a dedicated teacher, and he rightly understood that it was his responsibility to prepare his students not only with knowledge of history, but also for higher education and life. I suppose it doesn't really matter why Mr. Olson tortured my class that year as much as it matters that he did. My relationship with writing shifted considerably during that season. I changed from someone who recoiled at the very thought of writing a 5-page essay into a person who recoiled and then started writing. The process of writing has not become any easier for me, even all these years later, but my attitude has changed. Nothing honestly earned in this life comes easily. All men must labor and sweat in their appointed thorny fields if they are to have any hope of reaping a good harvest and sleeping well. My field, the blank page, doesn't scare me anymore. I've faced Vikings, and once it's planted with prose, I am eager to unsheathe my red pen and do some truly violent work. Thank you, Mr. Olson.